Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. From 1861 to 1865, the United States was divided in a brutal civil war. By God's grace, the Union defeated the Confederates after 4 long years. Now, the war accomplished 2 things. Number 1, it saved the Union, but number 2, and more importantly, the reason why the Union was in jeopardy in the first place, it abolished slavery throughout the country. One of the most important forces that brought a Union victory was the usage of black soldiers who were not only allowed to serve in the war, but also had every reason to want to. Let's look today at the vital role black American soldiers played in the Union victory during the Civil War. Now, it's important to remember when we talk about the Civil War that although the Union was anti-slavery, there was still considerable racism and segregation among whites, even on the northern side. But most importantly, the Union allowed and encouraged black soldiers to join the cause, even if many of them fought in segregated units. Now, early in the war, many white Northerners were at best wary of letting black soldiers fight, but in 1863, alongside Lincoln's passage of the Emancipation Proclamation at the beginning of the year, many black soldiers began enlisting to join the cause of freedom. Now, for these soldiers, the Civil War would have meant as much to them as the Revolution had meant to the Founding Fathers. It was a fight for freedom. By war's end in 1865, about 186,000 black men had fought for the U.S. military. The majority of them had fled the threat of slavery in the South, and the rest came from the North. By the end of the war, African Americans made up 12% of the entire force of the Union Army. The majority of black soldiers were paid less than their white counterparts, and they were sometimes demoted to menial jobs such as ditch digging. But they also performed heroically on the field of battle when given the chance, such as the Battle of Milken's Bend in the spring of 1863. But the shining moment for black soldiers was the Fall of Richmond in 1865. The 25th Union Corps overtook the Confederate capital in April of 1865, and many of the first soldiers to overtake the walls of Richmond and enter the city were black. Clearly, black soldiers played a vital role in the Union victory. They fought for their freedom, and they earned it. Now, a final footnote to this story before we close. The Confederates shot themselves in the foot because, thinking blacks were inferior to whites and therefore less than human, they prevented blacks from serving throughout the war on their side. Now, of course, it would have been nearly impossible to find a black man who would have wanted to fight for the Confederacy anyway, but there were some. In a last-gasp desperation move to stay in the fight, the Confederates legalized the use of black soldiers in March of 1865, but by that point, it was far too little too late, and the truth is that very few men enlisted. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.